Hey, what's up everyone? Ben at ProFixerr, and in today's video, we're gonna walk through how to assemble an amazing microscope like I have here. It's gonna be the double boom mount where you can actually slide it, moves out of the way. It articulates really incredibly for microsoldering. It's a really amazing piece of equipment to have. So I'm gonna walk you through all of the physical assembly of how to assemble the actual boom and also how to put the microscope on. In another video, we're gonna walk through how to do the camera and get all that set up so you can record your repairs if you wanted to do that as well. This microscope is part of the intermediate microsoldering kit that Injured Gadgets offers. I actually worked with Injured Gadgets a little bit to make sure that all the parts in that kit are pretty well rounded and will get you up and going with soldering. This works out really great as well because we offer a 90-day microsoldering course where I, along with a couple other coaches, work with brand new and advanced students to learn microsoldering and to better your diagnostic skills. And I want to let you know this is not just a course where we're going to give you a good overview, but we want to actually see you understand, implement, and begin to profit and create that profitable system of microsoldering in your business. If you're interested for that, the link is in the description below. As well, everything else on my workbench, including this microscope, all of my equipment, and anything else that I use is linked up there as well, so be sure to check that out. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, like this video, and also don't forget the notification bell so you see all the newest videos as we release them. Without further ado, let's get started on the assembly of this microscope. Here inside of this box, I do have a microscope that looks identical to this one here. This is a pretty awesome setup because it has the double boom slide on it where you can actually move it out of the way, and then you can actually twist and then move it a couple different ways as well. It's really cool and works really great for microsoldering because you can solder things all over your bench, pull it off the edge, and be able to solder things that are hanging over, for instance, like an HDMI for a console, which works really great. It gives you a lot of articulation. So I'm gonna show you how to assemble this one. Apparently the instructions that come with it, I'm not sure because I don't really follow them when I assembled my own, are a little bit hard to understand. So I'm gonna show you the full assembly as I would do it here. And honestly, this microscope is gonna be one, I assembled this one back in I think 2018 or something like that. And so it's been a long time since I've assembled one, but I think I should be able to figure it out and you'll be able to follow along with me to make sure that you get your setup and also to do a little bit of changes from what the instructions say to get it to work a little bit better for microsoldering. So go ahead and open up the top and we'll dig right into this here. All right, cool. So opening this one up, this is an awesome scope from Parco. So an amazing scope brand, very similar to Amscope if you ever heard of them. But yeah, this is the double boom stand, which will work out really good. So go ahead and place that off to the side. You may need it later, I'm not sure. Like I mentioned, it's been a long time, so we may reference it a tiny bit, but we should just be able to reference everything inside of here. And actually this is taped together, so I'm actually gonna pull this apart because I don't have someone here with me to open it up, and then we're just gonna try to cut the sides of this one and open it up here. All right, cool, awesome. So pull that out and set that off to the side to get it out of the way. All right, cool. So you're gonna have a couple different things in there. Everything is really heavy, I wanna warn you. So make sure you have a good grip on it. Don't drop it because you may break it, especially this bottom stand here. It's actually surprisingly heavy. I would guess, I don't know, is this thing like 40 pounds, 50 pounds, something like that? It's actually pretty stout. So go ahead and take this one out of the bag, and then set it on your bench, and then go ahead and throw everything else away. All right, cool. So the next thing that you want to do is go ahead and take the little slide portion out. And I think we should just be able to put that in there now, and that way it's ready to for the rest of it. So just kind of place that in there and screw it in clockwise. All right, cool, until it's all the way in, and then just rotate it, and this little guy right here will need to be locked in there as well. On mine in particular, I have it right about, I actually do have a measuring tape here, so coincidentally that's sitting on the edge of my bench. But to measure mine, if you want to get it set up just like mine without a Barlow lens, you're going to want to put it at these particular measurements here. So I would say right about 4 inches up is where you want this top one to go. So measuring 4 inches from this little collar here to the bottom, we're going to put it right at 4 inches. Face that right towards you and then screw that in. Make sure it's actually screwed pretty tight because your scope is going to be sitting on there, and if it does come loose it's going to fall all the way down, and then of course the whole scope is going to fall too and fall on whatever you're soldering or on anything else on your bench. So just make sure that's pretty tight. Cool. So there we go. And then the next thing that we're going to do is go ahead and get, I would definitely say, the little boom, and we'll go ahead and assemble that on there now. So the way that my boom is assembled is I do have, let me see here. Pretty interesting because you could put it on upside down. The way that you want this, if I'm looking at it right, is you want to hold it this way, and then you want this to go up, and then you want the little lobe on the bottom of the boom to hang down. So this little boom, make sure it hangs down. So go ahead and just slide that one in on the top just like that. In order to kind of keep this from sliding away, you can tighten this little guy right here. Well, actually not that one, it's this one on the other side. So tighten that one there, and it keeps the boom from sliding out of the way because we will need to use that to make sure that, that we can put the head of the scope on there. This little guy right here is going to secure it to this shaft to prevent any kind of twisting motion. This other little arm right over here does prevent the slide from going in and out. One thing to note though, as you're working on this, make sure that these little, I'm going to unscrew it so you can kind of see it. These little arms just like this here do come off. So they do have a really long threaded shaft on them, so they should stay inside of the little ball joint there. But in case it does come out, you don't want it falling off and hitting anything, so just make sure that you do screw it in all the way. And that should be good there. But just to double check that we're all on the same page, you want to make sure that the back end is an L. It goes upwards in the back, and that you have the bigger lobe here on top. This will be key because these this little head part actually locks in to the front of this here. And then it locks in, and then that way you can put your scope down into the mount there. So the next part that we're going to do is go ahead and take out this little guy here, which, looking at mine, we still need maybe one more piece on there. Yep, we do. So go ahead and take the other little L out of there, and actually I have to go look in my other box because I don't have the head of the scope. I guess the head of the scope is inside of another box, but I'll go and get that, and then we'll bring it right back over here, and then we'll start, we'll finish that assembly. So this next part that we want to do is go ahead and get this little guy on there, which, just double checking, I got everything on that side correct. All right, cool. So we pulled that one out. One of the interesting things with this is it does have some collars and things like that. Like I mentioned earlier, these little arms do come off. So whenever you get it, it's probably just gonna have a little ball in there, and then you're gonna have these little guys here. Interestingly though, if you look inside of this little area here, you'll notice in yours that the collar of it does stick out. So it's actually, you'll have to disassemble that to make sure that you can pull it apart. Set this little guy to the side. We're gonna take apart this piece here. So just go ahead and unscrew that because we do need to pull that out. And you're going to assemble it in the same exact way that you disassembled it. So place this off to the side. Reach in there and push that little pin out, or actually they go the other way. Well, let's see here. Oh, I see. Okay, we need to unscrew one of these here. So I'm going to go grab a screwdriver and we'll be right back so we can actually pull that little collar out so we can assemble it right on here. All right, cool. In order to get this little collar to come out, you do need a screwdriver. A number 2 works, or a number 1 would work as well. That is going to be the size of the actual Phillips head. So both of them do fit pretty decently, and this is not a high torque screw, so it's not really going to matter either way. So what you can do is just go ahead and back that one out enough so that this collar does slide out. And let's see, just a little bit more, and we can get that collar to come out here. Cool. So you don't have to push out that collar all the way. Pretty interesting thing about this is this collar, if you do pull it out, I want to show you, it does have a little notch in it. So on yours, you'll see a notch in the top. That is me a guide screw. And then you'll see this little chamfer at the bottom, and that's going to be for the other point on here as well. So what you'll want to do is, this one was, let me actually screw this screw back in, and then these act as little guides for this little groove. What you want to do with this though is the little groove, the little cut part on it, you'll actually want to, maybe I'll hold it up there so you can actually see, but that little cut on it, you'll notice whenever you get yours. So if you can't tell in the video right now because you don't have yours in front of you, don't worry. Once you get in front of you, it'll be completely obvious. This little cut on the side. Make sure that it's pointing up. That's the only way that it can fit back in there when these screws are pushed in. So what you'll do is go ahead and just insert it onto here, and then go ahead and slide that one right in. And it is kind of tight to get in there, and that's fine. And then this other side is the actual, it's the one that you took out the other side. So you need to put it back in there as well. Same thing with it, the only way that it can screw in is with the little guide on the bottom, being guided by that little screw. But either way that you put it back in, there is a side that's threaded, and there is a side that does not have any threads. Just make sure you insert the threaded into the non-threaded side first. That way it reaches to the threaded on the other side, and that way you can screw it in. So you want to tighten it up just to make sure that those little guide pins aren't blocking it or anything like that. So screw this little arm in, and then go ahead and just rotate it around, making sure that it does tighten up on there. So what this one is for, it's pretty interesting. It's kind of a weird little thing, but it's so your scope can twist sideways, which you'll really never use in micro soldering. So go ahead and center it. And then what I've done with mine is I actually have, whoops, got it crooked there, is I have tightened mine up, and I guess you may need to actually tighten this other one as well. There is a little Allen wrench on the other side, but you can tighten that one up as well, and it'll keep it from rotating sideways. And then what I've done, just so it doesn't get bumped or anything like that, because it's not really needed, I did unscrew this on mine, and I just put it in my drawer down here, and that way I just have it in case I do need to put it on and tighten it up, but it is there. So I'm gonna set that one off to the side. But now what we have is we have this little L shape here, and then we have the lobe going down. We have a 4-inch space from the bottom of this collar to the top of the collar, and then we have this hooked on now with the proper, chamfered little connections inside of there. Once you have yours, you'll totally see how it hooks together, but it totally will make sense. The last thing you want to do before putting your scope head on, is because you don't really have any way to put it on, is go ahead and unscrew this bottom piece here. This last part right here is going to be the little holder for the microscope head itself. So what you want to do with this, it's pretty interesting, because if you see in some of the videos and some of the instruction, I don't know exactly what this one here, and actually you do, because look at the video, or look at the little image there. The little image shows it should go like this. But the problem with that is it hangs down too far, and then your scope will be too far from everything else, especially if you're not using a Barlow lens, and then the bottom of the scope will hit things. It'll get in the way of doing like HDMIs on Xbox Ones and Xbox One S's and then One X's, and then also in other things as well, because it hangs down too low. So what I did with mine after a while is I flipped it over. It makes up so much room, and it makes it so much better. So go ahead and unscrew the back of this just a little bit, not all the way, just enough to slide it on. And then you want to go ahead and screw this on the bottom here. And make sure you get your threads on there right. And remember, while threading any of this in, if you feel like any of it's going crooked, don't force it. Actually, I'm going to tighten this one on. There we go. Now it's out of the way. And then you can go ahead and just tighten it on there. What you want to do is go ahead and drop it down all the way, because it should just sit there, and then you can tighten it on. The only thing with this is you do want like a little bit of rotation motion like this here. So you can leave that loose, or you can tighten it depending. Since I do tuck my scope away, I do leave it loose, and then that way I can just push it right off to the side. Of course, double check that your little piece is not coming out every couple weeks or so, and that should be good there. But now we're all good. This last one here does change the way that the scope moves. So one thing that you would want to do is this one always needs to be in the right spot. If you're down a little bit, if you're zoomed in really far, sometimes the depth of field, as far as what it'll allow it to focus at, could be off, like on the top or the bottom of the image, if this is crooked at all. So make sure you get it completely straight, and then just go ahead and tighten it on there, pretty tight. This will just pinch it on and make sure that it doesn't come off. And then of course, screw the little arm in there. But that is all that we need to do as far as the basic assembly of the scope. I'm gonna go and get the head of the scope to put it on here, and then we'll finalize the actual assembly of the whole scope so that it could be used, and we'll go ahead and do that. All right, awesome. Now we're back with the actual Simulfocus microscope head. And so this one here did come in a separate box. Whenever you get the kit, you'll have that in there as well. So just go ahead and open it and carefully remove it. It's in the same type of style of packaging where it's just wrapped up, and then you do have this nice little thing here. You know, I guess if you're gonna drop any of the parts, make sure you drop these. Don't drop this one here. It's much more delicate than the rest of it. So we'll open it up there. So one thing to not forget that is surprising that we get a lot of messages on is these little eyepieces here. You have to have those inside of the scope itself. So go ahead and unpack it. We're gonna just go ahead and lay this down over here. Make sure that it doesn't roll off your bench. Go ahead and take the little eyepieces there, and then some random little rubber grommets, and then of course the little camera connection, which we'll use on another video. So let me see if I have a space that I can toss this down onto. All right, cool. Now we got a little more space on our bench, we can now go ahead and assemble everything else. So this little scope head is pretty easy to attach on there. And so what you want to do is you'll literally just unscrew this little thumb screw on the other side of this little ring, and then you'll just drop it down in there, and then you can kind of screw it in. You don't really need to screw it in much because then it will, you know, prevent it from rotating, but just, yeah, that works good. The little bottom of this does have a little cap on there. I would leave it on during assembly. Also, if you're not using a camera, leave this on because you don't want dust getting inside of there. These little eyepieces here, make sure you remove them, and then of course we gotta hook these little guys on. The little rubber eyepieces, I don't think we'll be using them. You can just use them without it, and that's totally fine because on my Amscope, I don't use them at all. Definitely, I don't think I plan on using them on this Parco. All right, so one little last thing before you can put those in there, and that was actually a little bit confusing to me. What you'll need to do is go ahead and get a little Phillips screwdriver and loosen up these little set screws here. So these little set screws themselves will hold your eyepieces in. So just unscrew them about 2 or 3 turns, and then you can insert your eyepieces all the way in. Looking for our other one, we're gonna put that in the same way. Make sure you do tighten them down, and then that way they are fully in there. So there we go. And then you can go ahead and tighten up those little ones there. Cool. One of the cool things about this particular microscope compared to the Amscope is the eyepieces are stationary as far as the depth of field that they have. However, the mounts that they sit in is going to be what is adjusting those. And we'll go over all the adjustments and things like that in another video so that we can get the scope to focus through its whole zoom range, which would be pretty awesome. But I'll show you exactly how to use those. But the way that you'll use them just really briefly is you just move the collar, and as you can see, whenever you move yours, you'll notice that the eyepiece either goes in or it goes out, which is awesome. So the last step to this, to assemble the scope, and like I mentioned before, without a Barlow, without a camera, just with the basic setup, we're gonna cover those other things in other additional videos. We wanted to just get the bare bones construction of the actual stand with the microscope and get all that set up so you can kind of get rolling to an extent and get it set up on your workbench, and then fine tune it, is the LED ring. So this one here is pretty cool, just a little LED ring, and it does have a little bit of a power supply on it. And essentially it's the way that you assemble it is just back out these little screws so that it kind of widens it to fit on the bottom of this microscope head. And to make it easy for you, you want to make sure that you aim this little back end here backwards, because if not, it's going to get in your way and all that kind of stuff. But this, whenever you look at the bottom of your microscope head, you're going to notice that there's like a little ring indentation on there. So make sure that you put that in. Oh, at this point, actually, now we do need to pull that little. We do need to pull that off, this little ring here, so we can actually see through it. So once you have it on there, the ring light's too close, and you can't actually get in there. So here we go. We're going to put this right inside of the little crevice there. And then just make sure that it doesn't fall off. Just kind of push on it real quick. And then go ahead and take out your power supply. Now, of course, go ahead and plug that in wherever it's most convenient for you, generally somewhere behind your scope so that it is behind your workbench, and then you can plug it in. Cool thing about this, it does have the switch on one side and it does have the dimmer on the other, so you can run that. One thing to remember, this is a boom mount, so if you're working on something and have like a tall fume extractor next to you, the fume extractor itself does sit up high enough that if you run your scope backwards, sometimes you can run across it, or if you pull it forwards, it can run across and it can actually turn off or turn on your the dimmer. So definitely be careful of that. I did that once and didn't have any idea what happened because it was just so sudden moving it, but it was just the dimmer that got rolled. So do keep that in mind. But yeah, it is kind of nice depending on what you're working on to be able to dim it or brighten it at any given time. I generally rarely do that, but in certain situations it can help to make it a little more clear depending on what you're working on. But here it is in all its glory, the Parco scope from the Injured Gadgets Intermediate Micro Soldering Kit. This is the same exact one that you'll get inside of the intermediate and then also the highest level. Definitely check those out. They have all the way from, they have 3 kits available, so they have kind of a basic, intermediate, and then the advanced kit, which are all really awesome. They come with some really great equipment. I verified all of it with Injured Gadgets before they started to create them to make sure that it was a really well-rounded kit for micro soldering, and it is what we directly recommend inside of our program, where we bring on students that are beginner, advanced, and anywhere in between to learn, implement, and profit from micro soldering by creating a profitable workflow and service throughout your store, because that is generally where people miss out on. They sometimes pick up soldering enough, but they're so distracted by everything else in their store that they can't make it a profitable service. And so that's what we do. We make sure that you can, understand what soldering is, implement it, and then also profit from it consistently week after week after week. And so if you want to be part of that, check out the link in the description below where you can connect with me and we can discuss our program a little more in depth and to go over some of the things that we do recommend, some of the things that we cover, and kind of go from there. But I hope you enjoyed this particular video on how to assemble the stand, the microscope, get all that set up with the little ring light in order to start your micro soldering journey. And if you're watching this from outside of the cell phone repair industry, I want to welcome you to our channel as well. You may find it interesting to see some of the other stuff that we cover that are specific to the cell phone industry. But don't forget to subscribe to our channel, like this video, and also hit the notification bell so you see all the newest videos as we release them. But once again, my name is Ben, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.